DA Scott America stands with you.
Scott McNamara is the district attorney for Oneida County, and he's on the line now. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Bill.
So, tell me about this case. This is the classic diner case, and it does seem personal for you. The classic diner case where the guy smacks the waitress on the behind, and just so happens there's video, and the guy's been arrested. Tell me your thoughts on this case.
Well, it's not personal to me in the sense that I don't know the victim. I don't own stock in Denny's or anything like that.
Right.
But, but I have a daughter who worked in the waiting industry. I have a sister and a mother.
Yeah.
My mother owned a diner.
Ooh.
We're losing it.
Throughout my life, I've dealt with, it's a life I've lived. I know many waitresses that worked for my mother throughout the years, and it's just inappropriate behavior.
Yeah.
It's not personal; it's just inappropriate.
Well,
and, I know you feel sorry for them.
No. Let me. We always end up on two different sides, but by the end, we're much closer than anybody seems to feel. But I'll say this: when I say it's personal for you, it's the same way it's personal for me. I have a daughter and a wife, and that makes it personal. And I'm not trying to make it seem as if you're there's a conflict of interest, but it is personal for any guy who doesn't want to see this happen to whether it's a daughter or a wife or just a friend who's a female. I agree with you. Here's where I feel bad for the guy. There is a generation that before us, and I don't know how old this guy is necessarily. How old is he, by the way? 65. Well, he's older than me.
Yep.
That's the perfect generation. The wolf whistle, the smack the woman on the butt. I mean, I do feel like there's a generation that was brought up this way. And for that, I feel bad because they don't see that this is wrong. My wife...
That generation also used the N-word.
You're right.
Doesn't make that right.
I'm not saying...
I mean, it's just because something was done back then doesn't mean that it was right.
Did I say it was right? I said...
No, you didn't. But I'm just saying that's my position on this.
I get it.
Apparently that's his position. What's the big deal? 20 years ago, this was not a big deal. I don't know how to respond to that. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now, and it's against the law.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, okay? On a normal day, I probably let's put it this way: on a normal week, I'd probably at least once a week tell one of my assistants no reduction on a case.
Yeah.
So this is not I'm not asking for him to go to jail for the rest of his life. As a matter of fact, we're not asking him to go to jail. This is about personal accountability.
Sure.
He made a choice, okay? And once again, these are all allegations that he did. At this point, he's innocent until proven guilty. But assuming for the sake of argument that he did what he did, he made a choice to sexually assault somebody. And my position is very simple. There needs to be personal accountability.
Do you really think that is... But is that sexual assault?
Slapping somebody on the rear end? I don't know, Bill. What's your wife, a teacher? The principal goes up to your wife today and grabs her butt. You don't think that's inappropriate? Sexual assault?
Well, let me say this, Scott, because clearly I've stepped on your toes this morning. My wife was you act as if. My wife was in Babes before we were married, and a local attorney who slapped her on the ass. Was that appropriate? Well, back then, nothing. Let me tell you. I talked about it on the radio, and I was hammered with people calling in saying, give me a break. He slapped her on the ass. What's the big deal? And we've seen those comments on local websites in this case.
Right.
So all I'm saying is, and believe me, I do not like this attorney, as you might imagine. We were together. We were not married. And my wife was ridiculed because she made a big deal out of it. And everybody's like, you're blowing this out of proportion. So I get it. Don't get me wrong. I get it. And my daughter is 16 years old, and I'll be the one in jail if somebody smacks her on the ass, if you know what I mean. So
absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying 100%.
I don't want you to think that I'm endorsing this guy or what he did. I am not. But I do feel bad for the generation. We all have those people that come up to us. They were brought up and they use language that is inappropriate, like racial language. I can sit there and argue with the 80-year-old, but I feel bad for that person. And when I say I feel bad for this guy, that's why I feel bad, because he doesn't realize that this is wrong. It was wrong back then. It's wrong today. And that's my sympathy. The sympathy is short, though. I believe you're probably doing the right thing and saying enough is enough. So we're closer than you think, I guess.
No, I'm not. You didn't step on my toes. And I guess my point is this. There's a certain small segment out there that's pushing out on social media that what's the big deal?
Yeah.
And my position is very simple. It is a big deal for the victim. Okay, it's a big deal for a person who's trying to go to work and that doesn't want people grabbing her rear end. And whether that girl is this victim or whether it's my daughter, your daughter, it's like, for example, when my daughter saw this on TV, she immediately texted me and says, "You go, Dad."
Yeah.
Because she knows what this is all about. She's dealt with it. And I don't feel sorry for him, okay? Because unless you're living under a rock right now, unless you're totally living under a rock, or unless you choose
to live under a rock,
to what's going on in our country with the Me Too movement, women are sick of being sexually abused in the workplace. That's very clear. It's all over the place, and it started with Harvey Weinstein. And I have to kind of snicker sometimes when I see all this pushback on this guy, because Cy Vance, my good friend, the DA from Manhattan, okay, they chose not to prosecute Harvey Weinstein on a case.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted his resignation over that when it became public. And nobody knows what the facts of that were. Nobody knows who made the decision, whether Cy Vance even was involved in that decision. As I've explained many times, probably out of 100 cases that go through my office, my hands are on one of 100 because there's so many cases. That's what I hire people to do. I don't know every traffic ticket that's going on in Verona. It just doesn't happen that way. But everybody was calling for Cy Vance's resignation and how wrong it was that they didn't prosecute Weinstein for allegedly grabbing a lady's breast. So, I mean, what is it? Where are we? As prosecutors, what are we supposed to do? What am I supposed to say? Don't do anything. She was a victim in a case. She came forward. I agree with her position that this is wrong, and honestly, it's about personal accountability. Nobody's trying to put this guy in jail.
Scott,
putting someone in jail for a year.
I do want to ask you about the sentence, though. But Bill, I understand the point you were making, but just so we're all clear from the show standpoint, you understand this woman doesn't have to deal with it, right?
I do sympathize. When I say I sympathize with the guy, far more I sympathize with the waitress. It shouldn't have happened. It was wrong.
The more you pity the guy.
I don't want it to come off as if I'm defending him and not her. I'm not one of those people saying, "Oh, get over it." I am absolutely not. But I do feel there's a generation that, and I hate to say, Scott, we're living in an era today where all of a sudden we can go back to, you're being too politically correct. That's what's happening. That's why you're bothered by this. You're too politically. Let's go back to the good old days when you could smack a woman on the ass and it was okay.
So, Scott, can I ask you
that mentality seems to be existing today.
Two things. What is
okay? Go ahead.
What is the What is a sentencing guideline on forcible touching if he were to be found guilty of this? And would that include any? Because you referred to this as a sexual assault. Is there an offender status that is part of this?
Yeah, actually, it is. Forcible touching is considered a sex crime, and obviously because it's grabbing the intimate parts of another person. So, I mean, that's by definition. But the punishment is anything from a fine all the way up to a year in jail. The first time that someone commits a forcible touching, it is not a registrable sex offense unless the person has a prior sex offense in their conviction in their past. If they have a prior sex offense, conviction in their past, then it is a registrable sex offense.
Wow.
That's not the case. That's not the situation here. So this is about, and the sentence is totally up to the court, and I don't know what the court's position is. I haven't asked the court. But our position is we want him to plead guilty. If he doesn't want to plead guilty, he can go to trial.
Yeah.
That's our system. And but this is about personal accountability. And I always come back to the thought process is this, and I've been asked this so many times because this case is getting a lot of media attention all over the country, let alone international attention, apparently. So, but the point is, this is the point. Just because something was wrong, and I always come back to Rosa Parks, okay? I mean, Rosa Parks did something that she stood up for herself one time because she thought something that was being done to her was wrong. And I am sure if you and I rolled back the clock and we were around back then, and I was a DA and you were a radio personality back then, people would be saying, what's the big deal?
Right.
Well, now we look at Rosa Parks as a national figure, a woman who stood up for herself and her rights to be treated fairly and equally.
Yeah.
And that's all this young lady's trying to do, is to stand up for her rights to be treated fairly and equally.
I
admire her for that. I really do, because the part that probably is the most offensive to me, the part that bothers me the most, is that this young lady said, I don't like what happened to me, so I'm going to do something. And now there's this groundswell of people that are attacking her, and that's wrong.
Yeah,
that's absolutely wrong.
Well, as I said, that is exactly what 20 years ago my wife went through, and she was ridiculed because you're making a big deal out of nothing. So I get it. Here, my question though, when I asked you about a sexual crime, is more legal. So listen to this that someone has presented to me. The big issue for everyone that everyone's not talking about with the butt toucher is the statute. You have to prove they touched an intimate part of the body with intent to degrade the other person or personal sexual gratification. Very tough to prove. Can you comment on that?
I'm not saying that isn't a difficult case to prove, and that is part of the element that we have to prove, that he was doing it for his sexual gratification or degrade her. That'll be up for a jury to make that decision. On a personal level, I just believe most people understand the concept. When a guy grabs a girl's rear end, if it's not an accident, then what was it done for?
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. I mean, I witnessed forcible touching surprisingly, like at will, when I went to Woodstock. And when Woodstock was here, I went to watch Willie Nelson play in the morning, and there was a young lady, and Woodstock was kind of, it was a little crazy there because they had
Zero rules. It seemed
no police were present in the inside of the fence, so to say. There was a young lady who, for whatever reason, chose not to have a top on. She was on a guy's shoulder, and I literally stood there and watched 10 guys come up and grab her breast. And does that make it right? No, they all should have been arrested.
Yeah,
and it's a message about what the government's position is, and in my job, my position is very simple. Okay, I believe it's inappropriate. I believe it's illegal, and I believe in my position, I will make sure that we are going to enforce that law. We're going to do it in a no-nonsense way, and because I want the message sent in Oneida County, this isn't going to be tolerated by your government.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I tell you, the local attorney that grabbed my wife, I'm not going to announce his name, although I think we did back then. But we clearly don't use his services. But it was, listen, that was just 20 years ago, and it was appalling for me and my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time. It was appalling at that time. I feel it probably should be the same today. And you're right. If you don't get that grabbing some woman, your waitress, if you haven't figured out that is going to get you in trouble, and a little more than a slap on the wrist or a slap in the face, then you have been living under a rock.
Absolutely.
And you're certainly sending the message. So
and once again, nobody's saying the waitress should have to tolerate that, deal with that. No. And nobody is arguing that here anyway.
I am not. But I feel for people that can't seem to figure this out. And maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just not feel for them. But either way, Scott, as always, it's always compelling. I appreciate the conversation. Thanks.
Always fun to be on with you, Bill.
Thanks,
Scott. So much. Have a great day.
All right.